But after David defeated Goliath, Jonathan did this incredible thing when he stripped himself of the robe that he was wearing, and he gave it to David. When Jonathan was doing that, the robe that he wore was much more than just a piece of clothing, right? That robe represented who he was in the kingdom. It represented that he was Saul's son. It represented that he was next in line to be king. And the Bible says Jonathan stripped himself of that robe, of his bow, and he laid everything at David's feet. He relinquished his rights. And that's the second thing that we can do to grow in our friendship, is to relinquish your rights. Because the reality is friendship is messy, isn't it? There are times that you get hurt. There are times that you roll the dice and you lose. There are times that you open your life up to a friend and you entrust that friend with something precious, and instead of taking it and treating it like the precious thing it is, they break it. They destroy it. Maybe you've been betrayed, you've been hurt, you've had a knife shoved in your back before. And so you put on this coat that says, I wear the right to be angry. I wear the right to be upset. I have a right to be hurt because I need to protect myself from that ever happening again. Jonathan stripped himself of that robe and laid it at David's feet. Man, what would it look like? What would your life look like? How differently would you wake up feeling tomorrow if today you took off that hurt and you laid it down? If you relinquished that right to be angry, if you let go of that right to be jealous, if you said, God, I'm not going to try to protect myself anymore, because as a believer, our friendships should look different, shouldn't they? We know that God has called us to be slow to anger and quick to forgive. And I'm not telling you that if you're in an abusive relationship or an abusive situation that you should ever put yourself in that situation to be hurt again. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying there are times that we've been hurt, and so we put up these walls and we call them boundaries, right? Because boundaries sounds better than walls. Boundaries are socially acceptable. Boundaries make us feel good about ourselves. Boundaries make us feel healthy and stable. But reality, that boundary can become a wall that keeps people out. But when we relinquish that right, God does something inside of our hearts. The friendship that Jonathan and David had, let me tell you, it blew away the boundaries. The Bible tells us in Matthew, it says, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder. How many of you would get down with that? Like 100%, Pastor Susie, you shall not murder. Raise your hand. Let me see. You're all on board, right? Okay, so let's keep reading. You shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. That makes sense. But the Bible goes on to say, but I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will also be subject to judgment. Whew, man, that's hard, isn't it? We can get down. We can be on board with the murder. Yeah, God, I'm not going to murder. No way, I'm never going to do it. But Jesus always goes to the heart, doesn't he? He always goes right through, just like a little pierce right to the heart. But not only that, but if you have anger in your heart, you're subject to judgment. It's important. It's important to the Father that his kids are in community with each other. And so verse 23 says, therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, so let's stop here for a second. If you're offering your gift at the altar was a place of sacrifice. The altar was a place of offering. On the first Sunday of the month, now we're doing first fruits offering, where we give you the opportunity to actually come to this altar and actually take your offering and put it in a basket. This would have been customary. This would have been a normal practice for the people of God. The Bible says if you're taking your gift and you're coming to the altar, you're coming to give me something, you're coming in relationship with me. The Bible says, and there at the altar, you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, stop everything. Stop everything. This is so important. God says, leave your gift there. Just drop it. Stop everything you're doing and go to that person and be reconciled to them. And then come offer your gift. See, what's in your heart is important to your daddy. It's important to him. Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 to 25. You've heard it said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you or take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. David and Jonathan had a covenant loyalty with each other that went beyond what most people would see or think of. They decided that friendship was worth the risk. Decided to relinquish their own rights. And the